welcome to Freshly Served, the healthy vegan cooking show. I'm Heather, and tonight we are going to make a potato spinach cake. It's going to be great with some nice filling, yummy potatoes, as well as some spinach to lighten things up and bring in some additional nutrients. We're going to start with the potatoes, and I've got some red potatoes here tonight. So with potatoes, like many other vegetables, a lot of the nutrition is actually in the skin. It's the closest point to the soil, which is where they get all of their nutrients from. I've got some beautiful red potatoes tonight, and the skin is not only nutritious, but it's going to be beautiful. And what I do is I wash them and scrub them with my little scrub brush. You don't need one of these, but I have one, so I use it. And then you want to make sure that if you have any like eyes, or there was one over here that has a little bit of a, what we call that, like an injury. If you have a potato injury, you just take it out, okay? Especially with the eyes like this, there are actually toxins in there, so you want to make sure you take them out. And I'm not really demonstrating a very nice way of taking them out, but anyway, the end of a peeler works really well, which is what most people use their peelers for after they're done peeling their potatoes. As long as you don't peel them, you're good to go. And sometimes you can see it goes a little bit deeper than just the surface gash, so you want to make sure you get that out of there. Once you've got your potatoes cleaned up, I've got a pot here that has some water and a bit of salt in it, and then I've cut my potatoes just in half. We're going to be slicing these and using them as layers in our cake, so you want to try to keep as big a surface as possible to make a nice layer, but if we cut them in half, they're going to cook faster. And I'm just going to boil them for about 15 minutes. I want them to get a little bit soft so that they don't have to be in the oven for quite so long, but you don't want them to be fully cooked. So while my potatoes do their thing back there, I'm going to get the rest of this thing put together. I've got spinach chopped over here. I've got some rice milk in a measuring cup. I've got about half a cup, and you can use any type of vegan milk for this. Coconut milk would be lovely, though it's high fat, so I've gone with rice milk today. I also had some in the fridge and I don't have any coconut oil on hand. What I'll do next is press some garlic in here. I'm just doing 1 clove. Keep things less intense than this one. And then I'm going to put some seasonings in here. I'm going to use some black pepper, some salt, as usual. And this sauce is going to go over all of the spinach and the potatoes, so you want it to be fairly salty. This is not a sauce that we're going to eat on its own. It's going to kind of infuse the flavor into the vegetables. So go a little bit heavy on the salt, more than you normally would. Got a little touch of nutmeg. It brings a good creamy flavor somehow. And some nutritional yeast, which I like to use for creamy dishes. Though if you don't have any, it's not a necessity. Nutritional yeast is this yellow flaky stuff here. They call it nutritional yeast, and a lot of people say that you get B vitamins out of it. I've read some conflicting stuff on that, so I don't really think of it as adding nutrition necessarily. It might, but I don't depend on it. I mostly just add it for flavor. Now, for thickening this, I've got some arrowroot powder here, and what I'm going to do is put a touch of water in there, stir it to get rid of the lumps, and then I'm going to add it to the sauce. Now, you can use cornstarch to thicken, but I wouldn't really recommend it because it's a very heavily refined product. If you cannot find arrowroot where you are, use some flour, some whole wheat flour or some brown rice flour or something like that. I would pick that over cornstarch just because cornstarch is so refined and very heavily mass-produced in agriculture, which is something that I try to avoid for various reasons. Anyway, enough about that. Get your sauce stirred up. Add your arrowroot. If you had some fresh herbs, like some fresh basil or parsley, that would be lovely. But it's winter right now, and I don't have any fresh basil, so I'm just going to go with it like this. Rely on the spinach. Just wait for your potatoes to cook, and then we'll get started on the rest. So my potatoes are about cooked. I'm just going to grease the pan that I'm using, and I use coconut oil to grease because, well, it just does a good job. And then when I'm done, I can just put it on my hands, get them nice and moist. So I'm using a spring form pan, which is where you have this little spring on the side and the bottom can come out. Really handy because you don't have to worry about getting stuff out of it. So I like to do this for certain dishes, but if you don't have one, I wouldn't go out and buy one. You can just use, you know, your regular baking dish. It'll just be a little bit more difficult to scoop it out. But hey, it all goes down in the same place, right? So I've got the potatoes cooked, and what I'm going to do is just slice them. And when I say cooked, they're not at the point where I would eat them yet. They're still kind of difficult to put a fork in, which I'm using because they're very hot. Might be easier to use your hands, but then you want to wait for the potatoes to cool off because they've just been boiling. Once you've got your potatoes sliced, then you're going to lay them down in the bottom of whatever pan you're using. And you just want to make one layer of potato. Then you're going to take some spinach, spread it on top, and spread a little bit of your sauce over. You want to get this sauce throughout. And then repeat. So you want to finish it off with a nice thick layer of potato and then pour the extra sauce on top. Whatever you got left, just put it all on there. And then we're going to pop it in the oven. I've got this heated to 350. And you want that to go in until things are nice and soft. The potatoes are kind of brown on top. Probably take about 20 minutes. So there you have our spinach and potato cake. Looks lovely. Very delicate, so be careful when you're taking it out of the pan. Especially if you're not using a spring form, you can see how convenient this makes it to serve. And this is freshly served. I'm Heather. You can check out the recipe for this and other healthy meals at healthyveganrecipes.net.